I want you to do something uncomfortable. Open your banking app right now. Look at that number. Maybe it's your checking account. Maybe it's that conservative portfolio you've been grinding to build for the last 10 years.
You see a number. You think you see security.
Exactly. You feel that security. But here is the cold, hard reality we need to start with today. That isn't wealth. That is ghost money. It is a hallucination backed by absolutely nothing but a promise.
A promise from a dynasty that is, and the data is very clear on this, entering terminal decline.
It's a harsh way to open, I know.
It is, but from a strategic standpoint, it's the only accurate assessment. If we look at the raw mechanics of the global financial system right now, most of what people call assets are actually liabilities. They're liabilities of a failing system.
And the terrifying part is this isn't new. We're not in some kind of uncharted waters here.
Not at all. We are simply repeating a cycle that was mapped out with, surgical precision 600 years ago.
And that's what threw me when we started prepping for this briefing. We're not using a Bloomberg terminal to analyze this collapse. We're not looking at Fed dot plots. We're using the ninth guardian of Bitcoin.
We're going back to the 14th century.
To a North African polymath named Ibn Khaldūn. Now, I have to be the skeptic here. You're telling me a guy writing by candlelight in the 1300s predicted quantitative easing and crypto economics. That sounds like a stretch.
It sounds like a stretch until you actually read the Muqaddimah. See, Ibn Khaldūn didn't just write history, he wrote the physics of history. He treated civilization like a thermodynamic system.
A thermodynamic system.
Yes.
Yeah.
He identified the specific mechanics of plunder that destroy a society. And if you read his work on the labor theory of value today, it reads like a direct indictment of the Federal Reserve.
Okay, so let's strip away the happy talk. We aren't doing the soft landing narrative today. We are looking at the raw mechanics of economic collapse through Khaldūn's eyes.
And our mission is simple, to figure out if Bitcoin is actually a civilizational energy vault
or just another tech stock. And to do that, we have to start with the basics. Khaldūn had a very, very specific definition of where value comes from.
This is the bedrock. Centuries before Adam Smith or Karl Marx, Khaldūn laid down the law. He argued that the source of all value, literally the only thing that generates wealth, is human effort.
He called it alchemy.
The alchemy. Labor is the only force in the universe capable of turning natural resources into value. If you don't have labor, you don't have value, period.
But wait, let's parse that. Because labor is a broad term. I can labor in my garden for fun, or I can labor to build a business. Did Khaldūn distinguish between just grinding for survival and actually accumulating capital?
He did, and this distinction is absolutely critical for any investor today. He broke it down into two categories, kasb and riv.
Kasb and riv. Okay, break those down.
Kasb is livelihood. That's the result of labor necessary for your immediate survival, subsistence.
The effort you spend just to stay alive.
Exactly. Rib, on the other hand, is the surplus. That's profit. That's capital accumulation. But here is the critical constraint he placed on it, and this is where modern economics just completely fails.
That's a constraint.
Even the surplus, even the rib, must represent the value of the labor used to obtain it.
So if I make a profit, that profit has to physically represent the sweat equity that went into it.
Precisely. If wealth creation appears to happen without labor, if you have profit without a corresponding expenditure of human effort, Khaldūn doesn't call that efficiency or arbitrage. He calls it expropriation.
Expropriated.
He calls it a distortion of the natural order. Essentially, it's the theft of another person's toil.
And this connects directly to his view on money, right? Because I was reading the notes, and Khaldūn was very specific about what constitutes real money. He talked about gold and silver.
Right, but he wasn't a jeweler. He didn't care that they were shiny.
Right.
No, he viewed gold and silver as tools created by God to measure and store value. But why? It wasn't some religious superstition. It was physics. Think about the process of getting gold.
You have to find it, dig it out of the rock, crush the rock, refine it.
Melt it, mint it. It requires a massive, undeniable amount of human labor.
So the coin isn't valuable because the king says it is. The coin is valuable because it is literally crystallized labor.
Exactly. It holds the thermodynamic truth of the work. You cannot fake the energy it took to create that gold coin. It's unforgeable costliness.
And this is where the connection to the modern day gets really interesting, because we are seeing a massive disconnect between value and labor in the fiat system.
But Khaldūn's logic, it aligns almost perfectly with Bitcoin. It's a one-to-one mapping. If he were alive today looking at the white paper, he would recognize the mechanism immediately.
How so?
Bitcoin transposes that physical property of gold, the difficulty to produce into digital code. We call it proof of work.
Okay, let's drill down on that. Because the mainstream media loves to attack Bitcoin's energy usage. They say it's wasteful. Why do we need to burn all this electricity just to solve math problems?
Right.
But under Khaldūn's framework, that energy usage isn't a bug, it's the entire feature.
It is the only point that matters. No labor, no value. That's the rule. Mining a Bitcoin consumes thousands of kilowatt hours. It converts physical energy, real-world watts, into digital security. That energy bill is the labor.
It creates a cost of production.
Yes. Without that energy input, Bitcoin is just data. It's an Excel spreadsheet anyone can edit. But with the energy, it becomes the crystallization of accumulated labor.
So when I hold Bitcoin, I'm not holding a token. I am holding a digital certificate of the energy that was burned to secure my spot on the ledger. It's like a battery charged with human effort.
That's a great way to put it. It is thermodynamic truth. Now, compare that to the paper in your wallet. Compare that to the ghost money we mentioned at the start.
Well, that's the modern plunder, isn't it? If we look at the Federal Reserve or the ECB or any central bank, they're printing money. But no one is sweating to make that money. There's no energy expenditure.
It is the unnatural multiplication of money. When a government prints fiat currency to manage debt, what we call M2 money supply expansion, they are creating claims on society's labor without doing any labor themselves.
And let's just define M2 for listeners. We're talking about cash, checking deposits, savings, basically all the money floating around.
Right. And when that supply expands without the economy actually producing more stuff, you are diluting the pool. Under Khaldūn's definition, this isn't monetary policy. This is theft.
It's diluting the labor of every single person holding that currency.
If you worked 40 hours this week and the government prints 20% more money, your 40 hours just became worth 32 hours. They stole 8 hours of your life without ever touching you.
That's terrifying. It's theft by inflation.
It's the thermodynamics of plunder. And this is why we're seeing the Lindy effect in action.
The Lindy effect. The idea that the longer something has survived, the longer it's likely to continue surviving.
Correct. Khaldūn's theories have survived 600 years of empires rising and falling. And here we are, 6 centuries later, and the hash rate of Bitcoin is exploding.
And hash rate is just the total computing power defending the network, right?
Yes. Think of it as the height of the wall defending your assets. The hash rate is at an all-time high. It feels like humanity is instinctively migrating back to this bastion of labor value. We are realizing that paper lies, but energy cannot lie.
But there's another layer to Khaldūn's warning that we need to unpack. It's not just about the money. It's about the society that uses it.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a concept that I admit I struggled to pronounce. Asabiyyah.
Asabiyyah. It's a beautiful concept. It comes from the root word to bind. It means social cohesion, group feeling, solidarity.
So like patriotism.
Deeper than that. Think of a startup company in a garage. 5 people, sleeping under their desks, eating pizza, working 18 hours a day for a shared mission. They trust each other implicitly. If one falls, the other picks him up. That is high Asabiyyah.
Okay, and the opposite.
A bloated, bureaucratic corporation where nobody knows the mission, everyone is fighting for a promotion, and people are stealing staplers. Low Asabiyyah.
Right.
Khaldūn argued that Asabiyyah is the engine of civilization. Groups with strong Asabiyyah build empires. When that cohesion breaks, the empire collapses.
And you're arguing that Bitcoin runs on digital Asabiyyah.
Well, think about it. There's no king in Bitcoin. There's no CEO. There is no central authority dictating the rules. Instead, you have tens of thousands of nodes computers run by individuals all over the world who adhere to the protocol in solidarity.
They're bound by this conviction of self-sovereign finance.
They enforce the rules on each other. That is pure Asabiyyah.
And this ties directly into Khaldūn's dynastic cycle. This is the part of the brief that actually scared me. He laid out a 3-generation cycle for every empire. About 120 years.
It's a roadmap of decay. Stage 1 is the pioneer stage. That's the startup in the garage. Strong Asabiyyah. People are frugal. They work hard. They accumulate wealth through honest labor.
Then you hit stage 2.
Consolidation. You get centralization, big cities, luxury. The rulers start to get comfortable. They stop building and start managing.
And then comes stage 3, the decadence.
The terminal phase. This is where Asabiyyah is totally lost. The ruling class becomes addicted to luxury, but they've stopped producing value. They're the 3rd generation who inherited the wealth but don't know how to create it, so what do?
They impose excessive taxes.
And when taxes aren't enough, they debase the currency to maintain their lifestyle.
That sounds uncomfortably familiar. If we look at U.S. debt, the deficit spending,
If you look at the M2 money supply chart over the last few years, if you look at debt to GDP ratios, we are screamingly in stage 3. We are in the decadence phase where the dynasty is cannibalizing the populace just to keep the lights on.
Okay, to prove this isn't just theory, let's go to the case study. The sources highlight the crisis of 1405. We're going to the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt. Khaldūn spent his final years there. He watched this happen in real time.
He did. It was called the Revolt of Copper, a perfect historical mirror to our current situation. The Mamluk sultans were broke. Wars, luxury, corruption. Sound familiar.
So they abandoned the gold dinar and the silver dirham.
They abandoned the God-given tools of stored labor.
Exactly.
Instead, they started mass-producing copper fullis. These were coins with no intrinsic labor value. They just stamped them out to cover the deficit.
They basically said, this copper disc is worth a silver coin because I say so.
And we have the data on what happened next, thanks to Khaldūn's student Al-Makrizi. He wrote a book, Ihadat Aluma.
So what were the numbers? What happened?
It was hyperinflation. Between 1404 and 1406, the price of wheat, the basic fuel for survival, jumped from under 10 dirhams to over 80 dirhams.
80? That's an 800% inflation rate in basic foodstuffs.
Imagine paying $40 for a loaf of bread tomorrow.
And the result wasn't just high prices. It was a complete breakdown of the economy.
People stopped treating the copper coins as money. It became a hot potato. You wanted to get rid of it as fast as possible. They started hoarding the gold and silver.
They hid the real value under the floorboards.
And they tried to spend the fake value. It destroyed the real economy of trade and labor. It was a human error in monetary policy that devastated a civilization.
And the lesson here is that investors back then did exactly what smart money is doing now. They fled the infinite supply. They fled the copper fullis and went back to the limited supply of gold.
Today, the copper fullis is the US dollar, the euro, the yen. The gold is Bitcoin. The mechanism is identical. Investors are fleeing an infinite supply for a fixed 21 million to apply.
But there is one major difference between 1405 and today. Back then, if the Sultan wanted your gold, he just sent guys with swords to your house.
Right.
Today, we have a digital battleground. I want to move to the bridge point you mentioned, the Blocksize War of 2017. Why is this specific event so important in the context of Khaldūn?
This is critical. Because Khaldūn teaches us that when a dynasty loses its Asabiyyah, it falls. But Bitcoin is a new kind of dynasty. It had to prove it had Asabiyyah. It had to be tested.
For those who weren't there, 2017 was basically a civil war within Bitcoin. On one side, you had the big blockers.
These are the corporate interests, the exchanges, the mining giants, the wealthy urbanites of the ecosystem. They wanted to increase the block size.
Explain block size simply. Why does size matter?
Think of a block like a page in the ledger. If you make the page huge, say 100 times bigger, you can fit way more transactions on it. It's faster, cheaper to send money.
It sounds great, right? Efficiency.
But here's the trap. If the blocks are huge, the file size of the blockchain becomes massive. Petabytes of data. That means you need a giant data center just to store the ledger.
And the average guy on his laptop can't run a node anymore.
And running a node is how you verify the rules. If the average user can't verify the rules, then only the big corporations can. And suddenly, you've just reinvented Visa or the Federal Reserve.
The big blockers wanted to trade decentralization for corporate efficiency.
And on the other side, you had the small blockers, the warriors of the periphery. These were the individual node operators, the developers, the average users who understood that small blocks meant anyone could audit the system. They were fighting for the soul of the protocol.
A battle between the courtier sultans and the digital peasants.
And here is the miracle. The small blockers won. The individuals running nodes on their laptops defeated the multi-billion-dollar corporate coalition. The miners threatened to attack. The exchanges threatened to delist, but the users held the line. They signaled their own Asabiyyah.
This goes right back to Khaldūn's point. The big blockers tried to act like a dynasty, dictating rules from the top down. But the protocol rejected them.
It created a social security protocol that no central authority can break. In 1405, the Sultan could force you to take copper coins because he had the swords. In 2017, the corporate giants couldn't force the code change because they didn't have the consensus.
That is the strategic difference.
That is why this energy ledger is the safest place for your labor. It's immune to the Sultan attack.
That's a powerful image. The code is stronger than the crown. So let's bring this all together. We've got a 14th century prophet, a collapsed Egyptian economy, and a digital protocol running on thermodynamics. What does this mean for the listener right now today?
It means you have a choice that will define your legacy. Khaldūn proved that when money decouples from labor, civilization collapses. It is not a matter of if, but when.
We are currently living in a terminal dynasty marked by debt-driven decadence and labor alienation.
If you are keeping your wealth in fiat, you are essentially working for free. You are letting inflation siphon off your hours, your stress, your effort.
You are storing your life force in a leaking bucket.
That is the raw truth. And every time they print, they punch another hole in that bucket.
So the strategy is clear.
The strategy is this. Do not entrust your life's work to a dying dynasty's paper. You must move your labor to the energy ledger. You need to store your value in a system that respects the thermodynamics of work.
It's about securing the future. Khaldūn talked about 3 generations.
Exactly. Your choice of Asabiyyah today, whether you choose the failing cohesion of the fiat state or the rising cohesion of the Bitcoin network, will define the fate of your legacy for the next 3 generations.
Do you want to be the ancestor who lost everything in the Revolt of Copper? Or the one who secured the family's future in the vault of energy?
That is the question.
That's the question you need to answer before you close your eyes tonight. Ibn Khaldūn gave us the map. The Mamluks gave us the case study. Bitcoin gives us the life raft.
The data is there. The history is there. The choice is yours.
We'll leave you with this thought to mull over. We talk about Bitcoin as digital gold, but Khaldūn might call it digital truth. If the entire world financial system is based on a lie, that you can print value from nothing, what happens to the price of truth when the lie finally breaks?
That's the singularity.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next briefing.
Stay safe out there.